Okay, we're starting.
Did we start yesterday? We did?
We just like an introduction, a little bit. Okay. Okay, we're starting Gittin. Hamevi get. Mivdinas hayom. The person brings a get. This is the writ of divorce from overseas. So Tosas over here discusses why is the get called get. Usually a document is referred to throughout Shas as a shtar. Shtar, that's a document. Which say, Hamevi shtar gerushin. Person brings a document of divorce. What is get? So he explains numerically, a get, writ of divorce has 12 lines in it. The numerical value of get is 12, right? Gimel test is 12. But again, that's not enough of a reason. So good. So call it shtar, don't call it get. So he cites over here Rabbeinu Tam, the Rig, says he heard in the name of Rav Haigon, and who said over the name of Rav Sadia Gaon, that we find that we have 5 Chumashim. Okay? We have 5 Chumashim. Mishnah Torah is reviewing many of the things which are said in the other Chumashim. Correct? That's Mishnah Torah. It's reviewing the Torah. Now, the lines which separate from Bereshis, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar, how many lines separate from one sefer to the other? I don't want to refer to it as a book. Gemara says in Shabbos that if you refer to the Torah as a book, it's a problem. It's a disrespect. You don't refer to the Anorah Kodesh as a closet. The Gemara says if they do refer to it as that, because that disrespect, it has certain negative ramifications and consequences. So we find there are 4 lines separating between Bereshis, Shmos, Vayikra, Bamidbar.
4 lines each one?
Each one has 4 line separation. That separates. So what separates? The space.
The vertical space in the Torah? Is that what we're
Not the vertical space. The horizontal.
4 lines.
No. The vertical. The vertical. Before the next book, Sefer begins.
The vertical space.
Right. There's the equivalent of writing 4. You would write 4 lines, and then the next Sefer begins. So what separates? What's kores? Kores means separation. It's the termination of a marriage. The Torah refers to as the get as Sefer Krisus. Sefer, which is kores. Mm-hmm. It's the document which terminates. It's a terminating document. So since we find in the Torah what separates one sefer from the other, if you add up all the separations, separating to identify each sefer from the other, it's 3 times 4. Therefore, that's the reason why a get has 12 lines. And therefore, it's get, Gimel Tes, that's 12. Okay? That's what Rabbeinu Tam heard the name of Rav Haigon, name of Rav Sadia Gaon. Okay? Well, it's a document which has to have certain criteria met, otherwise it's not valid. Okay? We had a discussion in Kedushin. A shtar, everybody agrees that a get has to be written lishma, has to be written specifically with the intent for this man, for this woman, and it has to be authorized by the husband. If a sofer heard husband and wife having a fight, an argument, and the husband says, I will divorce you. So the sofer says, what do you say? You have to wait for the man to come. Starts writing the get an hour before the man arrives. He arrives, says, I have it ready for you. But he was never authorized. He was never appointed by the what? By the husband to write the document. Right? It's not valid. It has to be authorized by the husband. That's the criteria. So we had a discussion. What about a shtar kedushin? Right? The Mishnah says in kedushin, isha nikas b'shloshet drochim. A woman could be married in 1 to 3 ish. Keseh shtar rabiyah. The document of the kedushin, does it have to be written lishma? As the get has to be written lishma, so it's machlok samaroim. We rule a halacha, it has to be written lishma. That if a person marries a woman with a document, of course the Gemara says, how do we know that you're able to marry a woman with a document? How do we know? What's the basis? Because it says v'holcha v'hoiso. The Torah says v'holcha v'hoiso. Man found something unfavorable in his wife, he divorced her, then she goes and marries another man. Right? So it says, "V'holchem hoiso." So makish havaya liyitzia. The Torah associates the havaya of marriage to divorce. So just as the Torah says explicitly regarding divorce, the kosel sefer krisus, you write the document of termination. Identically, if you want to marry, you're able to marry with a document. So the Gemara has a question: do you have to meet the criteria? Just as the get has to be written lishma, if you use a document to marry a woman, does it have to be written lishma? It's machlok samarim. We rule halacha as the get has to be written lishma. The kedushin, shtar kedushin, also has to be written lishma.
That's not the ksuba.
No, we don't marry with a document today. We marry with money, with something of value.
So why would those who say it's not necessary, we say it is necessary to have that?
To have lishma.
So why would those who say it doesn't? What's the reason for that?
Review kedushin. So Gemara, it's a whole discussion more kedushin, back and forth.
You have to say that the paper is not worth the
No. That paper could be worth it. He doesn't have in mind to marry with the money. Okay. But he's not marrying. But he's not marrying with that. He's not marrying with that. See, that's the discussion over there. If you remember in kedushin, because since kesef, you can't divorce a woman with kesef, right? It's because it is an exclusion. It's specifically with a document, not with money. Because the Gemara is the other way. If it was so let's say, just as we're saying, as you could divorce with a document, you terminate, you could marry. So let's say, as you could marry with money, you should be able to divorce with money. Originally, how did the marriage come about? You gave her money. So let's say she would return the money, right? Maybe that should terminate the marriage. The Gemara says there's an exclusion. So therefore, the Gemara says, so the other person says, so you see, just as kesef, it's not possible lishma. There's no lishma in kesef, the kedushin. Meaning, it's true. If a makish havaya litzia, if I associate marriage with divorce, you need lishma. But why don't I should associate marriage with marriage? Marriage is closer to marriage. Other aspects of marriage, does it have to be done lishma? It does not be done lishma. The money that you give the woman, what had to be minted specifically for this act of marriage, doesn't have to. Take any amount of money, any object of value, you give it to the money for kedushin, she's married. So similarly, he says, so therefore the document, even though it's not infused with the intent of lishma, it's a valid document. This is the basis for the back and forth between. But l'halacha, we rule that as the get has to be written lishma, the shtar kedushin has to be written lishma. Okay. So the man is bringing a get mibidiyas hayam. Midiyas hayam means from overseas. The connotation of midiyas hayam means from a long distance. It's a distance from Eretz Yisrael, because there's an argument in the moment. What about if you have a town that borders right on Eretz Yisrael? So there's an argument in the Mishnah where the Yafsil Fonei Nechtam. Does the agent who delivers the get, does he have to test the fact that it was written Lishma? Because since it's in such close proximity to Eretz Yisrael, because the whole discussion is they're Beki Lishma. The Sofrim are proficient in all the laws, including that has to be written specifically for the husband and the wife. So therefore, if it's bordering right on the border, although it's outside of Eretz Yisrael, it's what we call Chutz La'aretz, one does not have to say. It has to be at a distance. The connotation of Medivas Yom means it's removed. As overseas is far removed, the location has to be far removed. He has to say it was written before me, it was signed before me. Before the Bezdin. We'll see, there's an argument. When he delivers it, is in the presence of 2 people or 3 people. That even if one brings a get, either from Rek and Cheger, which are close to Eretz Yisrael, although you may say that since it's so close to Eretz Yisrael, the Sofrim, they're proficient in Lishma, they know the laws, nevertheless you have to say
Outside Eretz Yisrael.
These are outside Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, but today that it's a smaller world, Kaviyachal, with technology, would any of this change?
No. Rabbi Lezer Omer afilu mikfar ludim lulud. You have a location called Kfar Ludim and Lud. Lud in Eretz Yisrael. Lud. Right? Lud is in Eretz Yisrael. Kfar Ludim. You bring a get from Kfar Ludim to Lud. We're talking about, it's one town. half the town is outside Eretz Yisrael, and half is in Eretz Yisrael. Or, the way some explain, it's called Kfar Ludim, it's the village of Ludim, because people from Lud would visit there. So there was continuously intermingling from the people in one community with the other communities. It's basically the same community. So it's not the same town. It's two towns.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the intermingling, so we should treat them the same. Nevertheless, we say that since factually it's outside of Eretz Yisrael, if the get is brought from Kfar Ludim to Lud, which is in Eretz Yisrael, the agent has to say, it was written before me, and it was signed before me. We can see the Gemara Tzemach Loksa. Rabin, Rovo, what exactly is the concern? Is it because we're concerned the sofer may not be proficient in the laws of Lishmo? Is that the reason? It was not written with the specific intent for this particular couple? Or is it because Ein Eidim Tzugim L'Kaimo? Regarding monetary documents, if a person wants to collect on a document and it's not, and the debtor is not here, what does the business say? Person comes and he wants to collect. Man's out of town and he wants to collect his debt. Right? Let's say the orphans, they don't know anything about it. He comes with a document. What does the court say? Go substantiate the document, certify it that it's not a forgery, then we'll let you collect. Right? What about if you can't locate witnesses?
I mean, the witnesses on the document.
Yeah, you have to substantiate. Maybe it's a forgery. You never know what it is. Just because you come with a document, do you know? Maybe you had the document written up yourself. Right? Maybe it's a forged document. Who normally writes a document? The borrower or the lender?
The lender.
No, the borrower. The borrower writes a document. The lender can't write the document. Right? The borrower wants to borrow, he writes up the document, gets it signed, and then he gives it to the lender. When the lender gives him the money, he gives him the document. That's proof of the loan. Right? But if the witnesses don't have to be certified, substantiated, that they're authentic, anybody could have the document written up, forge the signatures, and collect with it.
So when they sign that document, there's no witnesses signing the document?
There's always witnesses. But who says those witnesses' signatures are authentic signatures? Right? Maybe they're not authentic. They may be forgeries.
So
It says Reuven ben Moshe and Shlomo ben Chaim.
Right, so anytime a star is presented in any kind of monetary case, there has
No,
to
if
be-
the borrower is here and he admits he borrowed, it's no problem. He'll pay. Give me the document. I'll repay the debt. Not a problem. We're speaking about if he's not here, or he says, I paid you. Or he says, it's not valid. What do you do? He says, it's not valid. It's a forgery. So what?
challenging the document.
So you have to substantiate. You have to substantiate the document. How do you substantiate a document? Now it's interesting. There are three ways you can substantiate a document. Either the witnesses themselves come and they say, we recognize our signatures. You get other witnesses who recognize the signatures, which is testimony. What about if you have a document that's been certified and substantiated, and you compare signatures, and it seems to be they're the same? That's another way to substantiate a document. So you have three ways. Over here, Rashi only cites two of the ways, and Tosas also. He only says the witnesses will come and they will testify these are our signatures, we recognize it to be ours, or other witnesses come and they testify, we recognize these signatures are the signatures of witnesses. He doesn't mention the third way you're able to substantiate a document.
So
Now the question is why? Why does he cite the third way? It's mentioned elsewhere that the third is sufficient to substantiate and certify a document to be a valid document.
Well, the Mishnah has a fourth way.
How? He's the equivalent of witness. The agent, by testifying, he's the equivalent of two witnesses substantiating the document. The Gemara is going to ask the question. Not only you need two witnesses, why over here is one witness sufficient? Right? So the Gemara says, Mishum Aguna Akilu Barab, because it's a question of Aguna, therefore we rely on one witness, because he's coming from overseas. See, here it would be impossible to substantiate the document. See, if you have people, if you're in the same community, you seek out witnesses, you're going to find people either themselves or people who recognize signatures. Comes from Timbuktu, and you don't have people, there's no connection there, how are you ever going to substantiate the document? It's impossible. So by the agent testifying, it was written before me, he's saying it's not a forgery. It was signed and it was written and signed before me, so it's an authentic document. So if that's the case, But you normally need two, right? A single witness is normally not believed. This is the exception. Because Mishum Aguna, otherwise she's going to remain a chained woman for the rest of her life.
In a regular document, one person says, I
Means
recognize
nothing.
these two
Means nothing,
signatures."
nothing.
Means nothing.
This testimony is in front of a court. What if he's lying?
You mean the aide, the shliach?
Yeah.
Witnesses can always lie.
There's no punishment?
That's what about false testimony? I mean, whatever it is. I mean, there's no part. I mean, maybe they'll give him Marcus Martis. They'll flog him, right?
There was a level of collusion there in the past.
We'll see. We'll see. The Gemara discusses everything. Everything. But again, the reason why a single witness, because whether it's lishma, whether there's an argument, Rabba, what exactly is he saying? The document was written lishma, and it was signed lishma, or he's substantiating the document that it's not a forgery. But either way, it's a davar shebe'erva. We have a prince named davar shebe'erva post mishnayim. Oh, factually, this document, if it met this criteria, that means it's going to terminate the connection, and therefore there's going to be a transition from a married woman to a single woman. That's davar shebe'erva. We have a gzeres hakosov in davar shebe'erva post mishnayim. To testify regarding any change of marital status, you need two witnesses. Here you have a single witness. So why do you rely on testimony of one witness? So Mar says this is an exception. Bishum aguna kil barabonan. Because it's an aguna issue, we rely on the testimony of one witness, although he's one.
Why would he lie? Let's see. I mean, I can understand lying about a contract, a lie, things like that, but why would a executor lie about
Let me ask you a question.
he wants to?
Let me ask you a question. A man signs on the document, a loan document, the borrower. He signs on the loan document as one of the two witnesses. And now the lender lends him the money, has the document. Now he wants to collect. So we say, because you're related to yourself, you're not qualified to sign. Why would a man sign to obligate himself? So evidently, he must be telling the truth. It has nothing to do with telling the truth, not telling the truth. You must qualify as a witness. If you don't qualify as a witness, it's not valid. The document has no value. You have to meet certain criteria. First of all, regarding marriage, it's not a question of lying necessarily. You have two people under the chuppah. One is related. Right? It's not a valid marriage. Boy, it's not a question of lying. It's not a question of verifying whether the marriage took place or not. There, it's just establishing the reality of the marriage. If a person is related or a person is not qualified to testify because he's a thief or something else, the marriage is not a marriage. Okay?
So a lot of these marriages, marriages.
Correct. They're not.
But you mentioned a change in status. Is that correct?
Change in status, correct.
So we would believe a woman if she said, I'm going from permitted to not permitted, a change in status. Would that be correct?
She's not believed.
She says, I'm a Nida. You would believe her. Or that she said, I counted the days. Again, you'd believe her. A change in status. Would that be correct?
Okay. It's a good. Let's wait for Ahmed Beis to discuss it. Mishnah, the last Mishnah at the end of the Dorim, discusses a case. A woman says to her husband, "I committed adultery." Is she believed? Right? Is she believed? So the Gemara says that initially they said she's believed. She's believed, and the husband is not permitted to her. Okay? We didn't do the Nedarim that long ago in the Daf Yomi. Okay? So if a woman says Tameani, she's not permitted to the husband. The Mishnah Achrona says, then afterwards they retract it, no, she's not believed. So the Ran asks over there, how could she be? We have a principle. What? Yeah, that Ernie is the question.
No, you can't testify against yourself.
No. If you have 1,000 witnesses saying a piece of meat is kosher, and I say it's not kosher, are you permitted to eat the meat? You're not permitted to eat the meat. Right? You can have all the witnesses in the world saying it's kosher. I say it's not kosher, you're not permitted to eat the meat. Everybody else is permitted. You're not permitted. Why aren't you permitted to eat the meat? Because that's called shav nashchechet yisura. The Torah says anything, if you want to put a restriction on yourself, the Torah says you believe regarding yourself.
But if there's a punishment or something,
No, punishment's a whole different discussion, right? So if she says tameani, so if she's an adultery, she's not permitted to husband. The Torah says adultery is not permitted to husband. So when she says I'm an adulteress, she's believed. But Torah has a problem. The Ran has a problem. You're only believed where it has no negative effect on someone else. But here, by her saying she's an adulteress, her husband's not permitted to her. Therefore, she should not be believed. That's the Ran's question, right? It's chav lachrini. It creates a detriment. It creates an impediment to someone else. I'll give you an example. If I say I go on record, I owe so and so $1,000. That's what you say. You said in presence of two witnesses, I go on record, I owe so and so $1,000. And next day, the so-called lender comes, says, give me $1,000. He says, I never said it. If he has witnesses who are able to testify that he did make that claim, he must pay $1,000. What about says, well, I really didn't mean it. It's irrelevant what you said. Since you said I go on record that you do, Hodos Baldin Kameidim Domi, an admission is equivalent of testimony. As if witnesses testified that you owe $1,000. Therefore, he has to pay the $1,000. What about if a man was a debtor? Okay? And now the creditors want to collect whatever, the item. And he makes a statement, admission. He says, this item belongs to so-and-so. So if they belongs to so-and-so, if I normally would say, this table belongs to so-and-so, I go on record, it belongs to so-and-so. That's Hodos Baldin Kameidim Domi. One's admission is the equivalent of 100 witnesses. That's testimony. What about over here with I have a creditor, and by saying it belongs to a third party, my creditor can't take that as payment. He's not believed. That's called chav lachrini. Because here, by believing you, it's a detriment to a third party. By believing, that means your creditor can't take the item, the object, to collect the debt. Therefore, he's not believed. So if a woman says tameani, if yourself affects you is one thing, but here it's affecting your relation with your husband, so why is she believed? But the Mishnah Rishonah says, the first Mishnah initially says, you do believe. Okay? That's the Ran's question. So David, we learned Dharma, so what does the Ran answer? So I'll tell you what the Ran answers. Okay? I'll tell you what the Ran answers. So the Ran answers, I'll tell you what the Ran answers like this. We have a concept known as Anansadi. There's certain situations we could all attest factually, and because if we could all attest to a certain fact, although we have no evidence, but that confirms the fact. For instance, for a woman to come to court and say, I committed adultery, you know what level of brazenness and insolence that takes? A woman would not say such a thing unless it's true. We could say with certainty, a woman would not have that degree of brazenness and insolence to say such a thing. So that you did say it, that proves that. So it's not based on the principle of shav nashchechet yisura, that a person could create a setting of prohibition for herself. It has nothing to do with this. That kind of statement cannot be said unless it actually is true. What happened? But unfortunately, people have no shame. They were concerned, maybe she has an eye on another man, and she wants to get out of the marriage. You know her husband's not going to release her. So because of that, she comes to court and says, I committed adultery. What about the shame aspect? You know, things have changed. People don't have the same degree of shame as they once had. So when they saw things have changed, times have changed, so you know something? The Anansadi is no longer in place. So because we can no longer attest to the fact by making that statement, it's an indication of truth. Therefore today, you're bound to the husband. Your statement has no validity whatsoever. Therefore, you're still married, and we don't believe you whatsoever that you committed adultery. That was the Mishnah Achrona.
Initially, when did that happen? They wouldn't need a get?
No, get, she wouldn't be permitted. The husband would have to divorce her.
Oh, you'd have to give her a get.
Of course he'd have to give her a get. But we weren't concerned, the reason why she's making that statement, because there's no way a woman would make that kind of statement, because it's a degree of shame. Like, one time, it was all in the Jewish community, it was very rare you heard of a divorce, especially the Orthodox community. Today, it's not, many years ago, Beryl Wine once told over a story that it's unfortunately the way things have deteriorated. It's an interesting story. Andrew, you could tell this over in 5 towns. It's a good story. That there was one of his congregants spent some time white-collar crime. The story goes back 25 years ago, 30 years ago, and it's on one of his tapes. So when the Gemara says, when you come out of prison, one has to say Birchas HaGomel. So he went and he used to visit this person in prison. I don't know how many years he spent there. And so last visit, he says, when you come out, you can have to say Birchas HaGomel. So, normally we daven at 8:30, 9 o'clock Shabbos. We'll have an early minyan, just your 10 closest friends, because we don't want to embarrass you. Say, everybody's going to say, why say Gomel? Oh, he just came out of prison. We don't want to embarrass you. Just what do you mean embarrassment? I plan to make a big kiddush. Yeah, this is 30 years ago, you understand? Where it was almost unheard of that a person went to jail for this kind of thing. Or prison. Okay? People have no shame. You have no shame, people could say anything. So a woman saying, Tmeani, maybe she has her eye on someone else, and therefore, people, just to get out of a marriage, they'll say anything. There's no shame any longer. Okay?
Rather, the first missionary, it says she's believed. I'm still not clear why she should be believed, because it's to the detriment of her husband. And she's a single witness.
It's not because of testimony. It's just fact. I'll give you an example. The Gemara said, the Mishnah says in Shavuos, a man comes, we're talking about undocumented loan. We call milva peh, undocumented loan. Reuven comes to Shem and he says, I'll let you $100. And the person came after the due date. It was past due. He says, I paid you. Is he believed? The borrower, he believes I paid you. He's believed. Rabbinically, he has to take an oath. But on a Torah level, he's believed. Why? Because people borrow, they pay. What about the lender comes within 30 days of the loan, and he says, I'm hard-pressed for money. I understand it's not due yet. Could you please pay me? He says, I paid you. He's not believed. Because we say, a person doesn't pay a debt before it's due. That's fact. That's an unanswered. We can say that with certainty. He's not believed. And therefore, we could actually force him to pay the debt. Well, he says, I'll swear. Swearing is not good enough. Because since there is a presumption you owe, and there's no indication you paid, and we say, with certainty people don't pay a debt before it's due, you have to pay. There's no testimony. Just factually speaking. Factually, a person will not make this kind of statement, to embarrass themselves unless it's true. It has to be absolutely truthful, otherwise a person wouldn't make this kind of statement. It's unrelated. It's unrelated to belief. It's not you believe the person. It's just the reality of a fact. Right? So it's not testimony. Give you an example. There's halacha, we have this in Chulin. What happens if milk falls into a meat pot? You have to have a ratio of 60 to 1. It's called batul b'shishim. What happens if it falls into the pot and you're not sure what the ratio is? It may have been less than 60. What do you do? What do you do? So the Gemara says, a chulin, that you have timas kfela. You go to a non-Jew who is an expert. He has professional taste buds, and you ask him, could you please taste it? And if he says he doesn't taste anything unusual, you're permitted to eat the mixture based on his professional evaluation. You're permitted to eat it. So the Shach and Taz in Yoreh asks, we rule tam kekus d'oraisa, especially basar b'cholov. Right? We're talking about it's a Torah law. You're not permitted to eat a combination of milk and meat. A non-Jew has no validity regarding testimony. If you ask a non-Jew, is this kosher? He has no belief. It's not a basis to believe him. So how do you believe the kfeilah? How do you believe this non-Jew? He's not Jewish. That's the question the Shach and Taz ask. So they both say the same answer. We have a principle we could say with certainty. Milsa Davida legluya lo mshakri. Firstly, he's a professional. It could actually hurt his livelihood. Not only he's going to be caught in the lie. A person doesn't lie where he's going to be caught in the lie immediately. A person's not a fool. You know, you have some degree of shame. So since over here being caught in the lie is going to have very serious consequences and ramifications for this man, so therefore we know for a fact he's telling the truth, but he's not believed. A non-Jew doesn't have any nemanus. It has nothing to do. It's not halacha. It's just fact. Factually, we could say with certainty the man is not lying because it's not worth it for him to lie. No, we've had the Gemara Avodah Zarah speaks about the concept of mirsas, that if you have a situation where a non-Jew, there's a question, did he tamper with something? And we're speaking about he could be caught because you may come in the middle, right? Did he touch the wine? Did he not touch the wine? Right? This has to do with people. A person has a housekeeper. Did they switch the meat? Or didn't they switch the meat? There's a constant mirsas. They're afraid because if they're caught, they're going to lose their job. They're going to be fired. So therefore, because of that, we can say with certainty they didn't tamper with it, or they didn't change the meat, right? So again, it's an anatsadi. It's a concept we could say with certainty because of the consequences. So it's not a question of you asked them or did you? We're not relying on the testimony. It's just a fact, reality, a fact of the situation. That's the basis.
Rabbi, if a woman who has just lost her husband and she is childless, she comes under the rule of Yibum, and then she comes out and says, I committed adultery after my husband died. She doesn't want to go into Yibum.
It's not adultery. First, it's not adultery. It's not adultery.
There's some sort of a tie.
No, it's a negative for him, but it's not adultery. It's not adultery.
So what would we say in that case? Would we believe her?
First, after Mishnah Achrona, definitely you wouldn't believe her, because you wouldn't even believe a wife versus a husband. So a woman versus a brother-in-law, definitely you're not going to believe,
So
right?
She said nothing. I didn't hear anything. She's still obligated in Yibum.
Definitely, she's bound to Yibum. Correct. Yeah. Okay. So Rashi says over there, what are we speaking about? We're speaking about a shlich l'holocha. As we said, the Gemara in the beginning, the second parak in Kedushin, cites a pasuk. It says v'shilcho. So the Gemara says v'shilcho, that the man could appoint an agent to deliver the get, and the woman could appoint an agent to receive the get. One's called shlich l'holocha, one is to deliver, and one is called shlich l'kabola, to receive the get. So neither on the Torah level have to be involved in the delivery or in the receiving of the get. So here we're speaking about he appointed a shliach to deliver the get.
You've asked the question about Rashi, the three methods, and he
Only mentions two.
And you didn't come to answer the third one, why you can't compare signals.
Okay, I just wanted to do Rashi inside before I tell you what the commentators say on this. Maybe get b'din sayam. So we said. So we have an argument. So according to the Tanakama, it has to be overseas, meaning a location that's long distance. Rabbi Leil Omer, af maybe na rekem na cheger, even if it's bordering on Eretz Yisrael, from rekem to cheger. Rabbi Lezo me afil mekradludim lulud. Even if you have like sister cities where the people they actually intermingle with one another. So you'd say, whatever the issue is, you definitely either could substantiate it, or the people are sufficiently learned. Now there's interesting. The Chachamim seemingly are saying the same thing as the Tanakam. They said, one doesn't have to say von nechtam, only the one who brings it from overseas. What's hamolech? What about if you take a get from Eretz Yisrael overseas? Also you have to say von nechtam. But if you say the reason why the agent has to attest to its validity, because Lishma, everybody agrees in Eretz Yisrael, they were proficient in this area. So why is that molech? Because since the get is being delivered overseas, we're concerned people will confuse it. People say, well, just as when you bring it from Eretz Yisrael to overseas, so she's being divorced overseas, one doesn't have to attest to the validity of the get. What about the get is being delivered overseas from an overseas location, People say the same. Therefore we say no, whenever a get is whether it's being delivered from overseas territory or vice versa, we create a fence. The agent who delivers always has to attest to the validity of the get, that it was written properly. Okay? The Tanakama says no. The Tanakama says it's only if you bring the get from overseas. If you bring the get from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, one doesn't have to say Fanei Nechtam. Why? Because the issue is Lishma. Lishma is not an issue. Because the Sofrim, the scribes in Eretz Yisrael, they're totally proficient. There's not even a question that it was written properly to get. Hamevi Medina Medina B'din Sayam. You're taking it from one Medina, from one country to another. Medina is a country, like a municipality. One country to another, Medin Sayam, so Shem Fanei Nechtam. What about if you have two communities which are close to one another, but they don't allow, when the first time I ever learned this, many years ago, the example they gave was East Berlin, West Berlin, right? There was no communication from one to the other. And there was no intermingling, and the people did not travel from one to another. Let's say you would have to substantiate the witnesses. It's not possible, right? If you have one communities next to one another, you want to substantiate, go to the adjoining community, you're able to what? To locate witnesses who recognize these people. But here, well, it's not that far away, but factually they're not accessible. So if they're not accessible, it's a problem. Now, the Gemara says in Bava Basra, we have another minute. The Gemara says in the Bava Basra that if a person occupies a piece of property or a house, occupies for 3 years, and the original owner doesn't protest his right to be on the land, and the owner comes 3 years later and says, "What are you doing with my property?" He says, "I bought it from you, gifted it to me." He says, "So where's the deed?" Where's the deed? He says, "I misplaced it." He's believed. Because a person, when he becomes complacent, he becomes careless and he misplaces the proof that he purchased document. What about if the owner would have actually protested? So if somebody's already contesting his right, he's going to be careful to keep that deed because he understands he needs proof, because ultimately somebody's going to come to make the claim to be continued.